Alright, so this documentary from the BBC caught my eye, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play portions of it here. I'm going to have the link to the original below. I'm going to play some portions here, respond to it. Guys, watch the portions that I'm responding to. Tell me what you think.
So what does somebody actually need to acquire a gun in this country?
If they're going to go start on something like an air rifle, all you need is 2 forms of ID.
So I could actually come in and grab one of those now with my passport and driver's license?
Yeah.
So you can kind of see right there, the message is clear that they don't think you should be able just to walk into a store and buy an air rifle with 2 forms of identification being over the age of 18. Now, if you're somebody like me, that's a foreign concept. I bought my niece a BB gun a few years back for Christmas. Now, granted, she uses it under adult supervision, but, the fact of the matter is I ended up buying my niece a BB gun. Now, on that note, over there, that would be considered insane, guys. Over there, being able to walk into a gun store and purchase an air rifle with 2 forms of identification, that's insane to them.
The firearms legislation is in such an unsatisfactory state that it really requires a complete overhaul, a new code where we could look at all of the material, including licensing, and we could produce a more coherent pattern of criminal legislation.
Notice, even having some of the most stringent firearm laws in the world, this person, and by the way, this isn't some nut job gun controller, this is somebody with actual power, is saying these laws haven't gone far enough. It is pretty much the gist of what he's saying. I want everyone watching this to bear that in mind. This is the UK. So unless, you live in DC, New York City, or Chicago, you probably aren't going to get anywhere close to experiencing UK-style gun laws.
Do you think people realise how many guns there are in this country?
No, I don't think they do, which is probably a good thing.
Wow. This guy is glad that the public there doesn't know that there are still some law-abiding firearm owners out there. This guy's a firearm owner. I want you to think about this for 2 seconds. Because there's a reason why on this. I think this guy understands that there are a lot of people in the public that are ignorant on firearms and that fear what they don't know. And if they found out that there were a significant number of law-abiding gun owners in the UK, that there would be a public hysteria. So take that part to heart too, guys.
Most people don't even realise the neighbours have got a shotgun.
Most people don't even realize their neighbors have got a shotgun. Now, I'm not exactly sure if he means like most of their neighbors, or maybe there's one person in the neighborhood with a shotgun. I would be willing to assume that he probably means there's maybe one person in the neighborhood with a shotgun, and a lot of people don't realize that. There's plenty of incentive over there to not let your neighbors know you're a firearm owner, and nothing at all to let your neighbors know that. There is absolutely no incentive for gun owners to start a conversation on the issue, because they know they're going to have a hard time winning, and they risk their legal ability to own that firearm because of the mentality there. And you'll see this later on in this documentary.
For many of us in this country, guns aren't really a part of life.
Alright, so the guy's right. the culture and the firearm laws over there has put firearm ownership either too troublesome for most Brits to try, or they've made it off limits for most law-abiding Brits. That's pretty much all the gun laws there have done. As a result, many Brits, again, have an ill-informed position on firearm ownership. As the previous guy had stated, most Brits don't realize that their neighbor's got a shotgun. And he also stated it's probably a good thing that they don't realize that there are some law-abiding gun owners in the UK. That there's still a legal method to owning a firearm in the UK. Granted, much more difficult than, say, the US. The only places in the US that would compare, again, DC, New York City, and Chicago.
And unless you live in the countryside or regularly go clay pigeon shooting, you'd be forgiven for not really knowing much about legal guns at all.
Again, the guy's right. Most Brits don't know much about their own gun laws. I would venture out and say that I probably know more about the UK gun laws than the average UK citizen, and I'm an American.
Are guns legal in this country, yes or no?
Well, I don't know. I could say yes or no. I don't know if they're legal or not.
Do you know anybody with a gun?
I don't know anybody with a gun. I know people that have been shot.
Legal?
Legal.
Owned. People own guns legally in this country.
In fact, there are over 1.8 million legal guns in this country.
Right. Y'all catch that? Yet somebody who couldn't tell you whether or not there was a legal path to firearm ownership in the UK. Second person, she said she didn't know anybody with guns, but yet somebody got shot over there. She knew somebody who got shot. A lot of good gun laws did. And then you got a third one who's just shocked that you could legally buy a firearm over there. It's like a foreign concept to him. And by the way, 1.8 million legal firearms is a very, very small number. But apparently, the person doing this documentary doesn't think so.
The measures we have around guns are very strict, some of the strictest in the world.
So as you can see, nobody denies that they have some of the strictest firearm laws in the world in the UK right now.
And gun deaths are rare here, the majority of those being down to illegal guns. To some though, like the Law Commission, an independent body established by Parliament, our laws are inadequate.
Yeah, how independent really is the Law Commission? I mean, if they were to say maybe the gun laws were just fine, do you think that the UK Parliament would still continue to fund them? Do you think if they suggested maybe that the gun laws went a little too far, the UK Parliament would still continue to fund them and they'd be in existence? I don't think so. Governments, if you know the nature of governments, they only take programs that are claimed to be needed, and they only take programs that enforce their power. They don't like being told, hey, you know, you went a little too far with your laws. Maybe it's time to notch it back a bit. Governments just aren't all that interested in giving up power.
And need immediate reform.
Under the present law, it's clear that there are criminals who are exploiting these loopholes and putting public safety at risk.
So even in the UK with their strict gun laws, you still have somebody from their supposedly independent law commission coming out and saying that these laws are inadequate and that there are loopholes that criminals exploit. Now, come on, in the US, we hear that word all the time. Does anyone think for a second that that word's going away even in the UK? No, it's not. Because let me tell you this. If the Law Commission got together an example, a draft for all their proposals, and the UK Parliament was to immediately enact those proposals, like the Law Commission's demanding, like right today, I guarantee you tomorrow the Law Commission would find even more loopholes which criminals are exploiting. This is why you can't give gun controllers anything. You can't give in to them at all. You have to treat them like little children. No, you're not getting another cookie.
Legal gun owners, though, say our laws don't need to change. In fact, many think we should have more relaxed laws.
And I agree with them. You see, their gun laws are draconian in the UK. And hell, even in the US, I think there are some gun laws we need to scratch from the books. Problem is that once you get one of these laws in place, you have a very hard time getting it off the books because governments don't like to give up power. Gun controllers certainly don't like to give up restrictions. Give you a key example, the 94 ban. Had that not had a sunset clause on it, the effects would the law would still be in place. Pretty well convinced about that because anytime we do or did try to get something like that put off, gun controllers scream bloody murder, and they scream bloody murder because Congress and the Bush administration let it sunset. It was a bad law. At best, it took people's freedoms. I mean, and that's at best. I know gun controllers don't really see a problem with taking people's freedom. But if you're like me, a law-abiding citizen who does give a damn about freedom and what the law is, well, that's kind of an issue. Another big example, recently in Texas, we took off the statutory mandate that colleges are gun-free zones. Gun controllers acted like it was the end of the world, when in fact most colleges just simply put up 30-06s and 30-07s afterwards, making it still a gun-free zone, but it just wasn't state mandated. But listen to your average gun controller, that was like the NRA was coming to kill everybody. I'm not even kidding, they screamed bloody murder. They acted like 19-year-olds were now going to be able to go to the gun store, pick up a handgun, and just carry it with them to a college bar or to a kegger on campus and then go shoot the classroom up.
They say criminals don't follow gun laws anyway. So,
yeah, they don't. I mean, you're talking about people who aren't deterred by the laws and penalties on murder. You're talking about people who aren't deterred about the penalties on armed robbery or rape or assault. Why do you think that they would be concerned about the laws prohibiting them from purchasing a pistol? Or having a pistol? What makes you think that they're going to obey that law on a shotgun? I mean, they find an illegal arms trader in their town and they really want to commit an armed robbery or a murder or something like that. They'll either go use that arms trader or that arms trafficker, or they're going to go and use another tool. But let's be frank here. Many of these gun controllers really aren't about stopping actual crime. At least I know in the U.S. they aren't, because many of them have gone to bat for Black Lives Matter, which was started by a group of people who were sticking up for a thug that was gunned down by the police while he was attacking a police officer.
Stricter laws don't affect them. They tell me that they feel they're too often used as a scapegoat for anything bad that happens in relation to firearms.
Okay, try to follow what you just said earlier in this documentary, alright, man? Okay? You acknowledged that the UK gun laws are some of the strongest in the world, or some of the strictest in the world, right? You just got through citing the Law Commission, who says that even though their gun laws are the strictest in the world, they're still inadequate. Okay? So yeah, it's pretty obvious that gun owners are being scapegoated over there. We get scapegoated all the time over here by gun controllers, but it's got to be a lot worse for them over there. You know? Example, every time there's a mass murderer out, what's the first thing the media does? Oh yeah, they jump on blaming the AR-15, even though that might not have been the model that was used in that mass killing. They have gun controllers here all the time talking about how, oh, the only reason why you own a gun like that is because you have a small penis, you know? Mark-Lease Law, anybody? You know, so yeah, I mean, they get scapegoated. And guess what? I can imagine they're pretty tired of it. Hell, I'm pretty tired of being scapegoated too by our gun controllers over here.
And that they're not properly given the chance to tell their side of the story. So,
and many times that is the case. I mean, look at the latest documentary released by Katie Couric, Under the Gun. She got caught editing the footage that of her interview with the Virginia Citizens Defense League. She made it seem like they didn't have an answer to her question, but then when they brought out the audio, which she had no idea that they were recording, it turned out to show a different story. And then, of course, Katie Couric didn't even offer a real apology. She just sat there and was like, well, I was just trying to give the viewers time to absorb it. Yeah, bullshit, Katie.
so how does it work for you, and from your perspective, can you reject somebody if you feel as if they're not suitable for a gun?
Yes, we can.
Okay, now this question was really ridiculous for a number of reasons. First off, there's no law requiring any gun salesman anywhere to sell somebody a firearm, even if they do, especially if they do meet the legal qualifications. Obviously they can't sell if the FFL or equivalent in another country knows they don't meet the legal qualifications. But the fact of the matter is that they can at any time say, no, we're not selling you the gun. Same is true for the U.S. And to ask that question, especially in the UK, is kind of ridiculous. It is ridiculous to ask that question. Obviously, the answer is yes, and the FFL, or their equivalent of an FFL, I should say, did answer the question.
The police give us our licence, and then it's down to our judgment as to whether we serve people.
How would you assess me if I came to the counter and had my pass, my licence? What would you do to kind of just ask me a couple of questions?
Yeah, if you were stood there shaking, agitated, sweating, I'd probably figure something was wrong. I'd probably offer you a cup of tea and try and figure out what was actually up.
It's such a...
And again, another ridiculous question. It goes under the assumption that all criminals try to go get their guns legally from gun dealers first. And that's simply not the case. Very few criminals get their guns legally from a gun dealer. But the FFL handled the question. Well, not an FFL, he's the UK's version of an FFL. He's a gun store operator, obviously. He puts it straightforward. Nobody in the gun industry wants to see their products misused by criminals. That's not what they're marketing for. It gives their product a bad name. And especially if you're in the gun industry, the last thing you want to do, because you are under a microscope at that point, both by the government and by the court of public opinion, the last thing you want to do is see your hardware being used by a mass murderer or by any other criminal. In fact, when you look at advertising for firearms, you might see, if it's a hunting gun, you might see some professional hunters on there, or some people you'd see on the Outdoors channel there, or Ted Nugent there marketing it. If it's a personal protection gun, you might have a picture of military with it or law enforcement with it, and the whole military law enforcement marketing gimmick, to civilians, it is marketing. And the point is that the trained professionals who rely on this equipment to protect their life daily trust it. So should you. This is why people who are looking for personal protection firearms, or even sometimes firearms to collect, or competition shooting firearms, they look for stuff that maybe military or law enforcement trusts with their life. In fact, if you read Massad Ayub suggests that, hey, you look at what your local police department's using it. It's a defense in court. Hey, the professionals trust their life with it. So do I. Obviously, we know police officers ain't out there to kill as many people as possible. But they do need good hardware to protect their lives. They want the best hardware to protect their lives, just the same as anybody who gets a firearm for concealed carry. They want the best choice to protect their life. You want something reliable. You want something with ample firepower. Both the ample round and the ample capacity. You don't want to go and have to rely on just 2 rounds to protect yourself with. You don't want to rely on an inadequate caliber to protect yourself with. You want the best. You're trusting your life on it. You don't get a second chance with a situation like that. You mess it up the first time, you might not be alive to make it to the second time. That sort of thing.
Big responsibility. It's like being simultaneously a sales assistant or manager, because you're a manager, and a counsellor at the same time, or like a psychiatrist or something.
It's quite a big thing, even sort of the lowliest sales guy in a gun shop has that pressure on them. They can go to prison and get fines for making simple mistakes.
And of course the gun controllers are going to ignore that part. They're going to act like gun dealers just, don't have any responsibility at all put on them for the sales of their product. When in fact, yes, even in the U.S., you can be held criminally liable for a simple mistake as an FFL. Again, I hope gun controllers will take that to heart, but the odds are they're probably not.
I'm not in the world of guns. I don't really know anybody with guns. You obviously have had a different upbringing. So what is your background?
My father was a farmer, so I was sort of brought up around the countryside. I know he used to have guns.
When was the first time you held a gun?
Probably about 12, 13 years old, something like that in reality.
This one looks like it's pretty much the same size as me.
Alright, so I'm glad the author of this documentary included this part in here, because this highlights something very important about the situation here. Is you do have us gun owners who have grown up around firearms, who handle firearms. We know how they work. We know what they are. It's harder to lie about them to us. Much harder. Versus, say, somebody who has no real experience with firearms. Doesn't know too many gun owners. never grown up around them. This is why gun controllers want an environment where people are less likely to handle a firearm. It's because they know that population's a little bit easier to manipulate than, say, people who've grown up around them, people who know about them. I just wanted to throw this out there.
Before we go any further, it's worth looking at what guns people can legally own in this country.
That actually is a very good point to bring up. A lot of people, I mean, hell, even in this country, we have people who don't quite understand what's legal and what's illegal to own, or how to go about legally owning it.
To start, everything in that room could have legally been owned by someone with the right reasons to do so. Gun laws differ slightly in different parts of the UK. Northern Ireland, for example, is the only place you can legally own a gun for personal protection, and own a handgun. This isn't possible in the rest of the country. If you want to own a gun, your main options are a shotgun or a rifle, and for this, you'll need a shotgun or firearm license respectively. To acquire one, police must be satisfied you're not dangerous and have good reason to get a gun. Just wanting a gun isn't good reason. Things like sports shooting and pest control count. You are permitted to keep your guns at home. You'll just need to provide safe storage space. Most other firearms are prohibited. Handguns and most semi-automatic rifles are banned, for example. These
Again, the gist of what he said is true. Getting a firearm is easier said than done over there. The fact of the matter is, take for example on the genuine reason. Simply wanting to be a firearm owner and wanting to have a firearm is not a good enough reason. Personal protection, the only time you can get a firearm for personal protection is if you're in Northern Ireland, and if you satisfy them that you're not a dangerous person and that you have that genuine reason. Again, getting a firearm over there is easier said than done, legally speaking. So, again, they already have these draconian gun laws. And yet, there are people that think that those are inadequate, that those don't go far enough.
These controls were introduced after two major gun incidents, Dunblane in 1996 and the Hungerford Massacre in 1987.
No doubt that those gun control measures were brought in on a wave of emotionalism. Much like the gun controllers try to do here every time we have a massacre. Oh, and by the way, the UK still had massacres after Dunblane. Just want to point that out. In fact, they still have murders by handguns in the UK. A big example was Lucy Cope's son, Damien Cope, who was murdered at a nightclub with a handgun years after the handgun prohibition was put in place in the UK.
He didn't want to show me them there though, as he thought it'd send out the wrong message and worry his neighbours.
The majority of people, if they saw this, would be like, whoa, that's kind of scary.
And that's because, especially within the UK, you only ever really see this being used, say, by the police or in, say, Call of Duty.
It looks exactly like a sniper rifle. Is it
Again, as previously stated in the video, yes, a major effect of these gun laws is that people become ignorant of firearms real quick. When firearms are no longer in the hands of average citizens, they tend to become ignorant about them. They tend to develop irrational fears, as stated in the video. As stated by the reporter, if somebody saw a gun like this, it's being a bolt-action rifle with a scope on it, people go, whoa. And then then the owner of it said, well, yeah, this is something you either see the police use or you see on Call of Duty, which is a video game. See, this is one of the things I see eye to eye with on the open carry movement, even though I don't see eye to eye with them on everything. This is one of the things I see eye to eye with them, is that we do need to find a way to get gun ownership out there in the eyes of the general public, of the non-gun owning public, so they can see and they can understand that a firearm is an inanimate object. The owners of it are sane, rational human beings. The owners of these are normal people, everyday people just like you and me. This is a reason why on my videos, one of the reasons on my videos why I'll show some of my firearms off. You know, I mean, like this M1 Garand, which is illegal over in the UK because it's semi-automatic. That's also illegal in New York because the clip, and I'm actually using the proper terminology with this, a clip, this is not a magazine fed semi-automatic, holds 8 rounds. Whereas, you know, gun controllers, when they use the term clip, they often mislabel it a magazine as a clip. So as you can tell, this sort of stuff breeds ignorance among people. And with that ignorance, a lot of the times will come an irrational fear, which is something that myself and others try to work against.
Strange a bit being a gun owner in the UK, because obviously, I mean, you can go onto the internet and see the, I suppose, freedom American gun owners have.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating because I have absolutely no intention ever of using a gun in a bad way. I enjoy the sport of shooting. What people jump to is that I own guns for the illicit reason, and it's frustrating for me that you tell somebody that you own a gun and you're instantly a weirdo. For me, there has been no evidence to show that banning a particular type of gun has any, form of prevention. A semi-automatic rifle doesn't change the mentality of the person.
It changes the amount of bullets that can be shot from the gun, which could make it deadlier.
But it doesn't matter how capable the gun is of storing ammunition. It's about the person behind it.
This illustrates quite a few points. The common one I've been saying is the more firearms and the more people you put out of bounds for firearm ownership, the more ignorant the population becomes and the easier it is to instill an irrational fear into them about the topic. Said gun owner in the UK, he's jumped through every hoop the government expected him to jump through for personal firearm ownership. He can't own the same stuff I can own here in the US. He can't. And yet, even though he had to go through a lot more to prove he's a law-abiding citizen to own firearms, his neighbors still treat him as if he's a weirdo or if he has those firearms for illicit purposes, whereas mine don't. He still is treated like there's something wrong with him for owning firearms, even though he's had to go through a lot more than the average American gun owner has to be able to lawfully practice something he wants to do. Own and shoot firearms. This is a big reason why, and believe me, I used to live in the UK. I know exactly how things are there. I could see the frustration at the local shooting club. Their frustrations on being treated like pariahs for engaging in a constructive hobby. So I can fully see where this guy is coming from. I get to sit here in the US and own my AR-15, which I should. If I thought it was an evil device, I wouldn't own it. And by the way, I'm more qualified to speak about this platform than just about every single one of you people talking about banning it. Not only that, but I'm more qualified to speak about actual military firearms than you are. You know, and the thing is, somebody mentioned, well, you know, you Americans aren't above the world, you know, yada, yada, yada. Well, okay, you know, well, guess what? I don't think we are either. I think, personally, everybody in the world should enjoy our freedom. I wish all countries were a little bit more like America in this respect. I wish more countries would allot their citizens the same freedom that I have, that I enjoy. You know? I got a lot of, you know, and the thing is, I got a lot of buddies who own black rifles of some sort. I've got a buddy who is an FAL fanatic. All right, this is my FAL, but he taught me a lot about the FAL platform. Stuff I would have never guessed, stuff I wouldn't have known about the FAL platform. He's done some work on this rifle for me. You know? I wish this type of freedom was more abundant in the world.
So these are the guns that you kind of see on TV.
Yeah, the handgun is you know, it's something that everyone's aware of.
It's interesting that it says we don't call 911, we use handguns.
Yeah.
That is a popular sign in the U.S. We don't dial 911. They actually, in most cases, do dial 911 after the fact. You know, or even sometimes during the fact. But the fact of the matter is that what they mean by we don't dial 911 is we don't dial 911 for our protection. Well, if I have to so much as draw my handgun, it means that it was because it was a credible enough threat to my life. And, you know, even if I don't have to fire it, I am calling 911. I am reporting the incident up. It's just, I'm not relying on the police to protect me. I'm going to protect myself. And I'm going to call the police and report it up. If I get the chance to call them during the incident, while the incident's taking place, I'm going to do it. If I don't, I'm going to call them as soon as I can after the fact.
Something you ascribe to?
No, it's from a different culture. Being British and being a firearms owner, it almost feels illegal to have any sort of opinion on using guns for self-defense because that's just not what the culture is here. Criminals are, I think, laughing at us at the moment. They know that a lot of people are scared to do anything you know, offensive in their home because of the repercussions. You know, many people have ended up in jail because they've only marginally overstepped the mark.
And you guys wonder why I'm in favor of stand your ground laws and the castle doctrine laws. It's because of stuff like this. It's because if you read the case on Tony Martin, it seemed like the UK's government was more concerned with protecting the well-being of two career criminals than it was of protecting an elderly couple who were law-abiding, who simply did not want to be victimized of two thugs making a hot burglary on them and possibly even killing them. Yeah, this is why I support the castle doctrine and stand your ground laws. You know, because quite frankly, I would rather see somebody go just a little overboard in protecting themselves than to see them not go far enough and still be victims of that crime.
Alan told me owning a gun was like being in a secret society in the UK. He seemed worried to speak his mind due to the reaction he might get from the public.
Gee, I wonder why. Maybe it's because in the UK, most people have this irrational phobia of firearms. Maybe it's because in the UK they take a mentality of, well, if you're a gun owner, you're a weirdo or bad. You know? Maybe one of the reasons why I would like to not only see no more restrictions on firearms put in place in this country, but I would love to see a repeal on some of the existing restrictions we have in the U.S. And I know that sounds insane to those over in the UK. To many of those over in the UK anyway. But, again, many of you over in the UK do not understand about firearms. You don't understand firearm owners. Look at how you treat the ones that follow your laws and lawfully possess a firearm. Same for you gun controllers over here. Look at the way they treat firearm owners in the UK. And you think I'm going to give you more of an opportunity to treat me like that? To hell with you.
The last real conversation we had around licensed guns in this country was following the Cumbria massacre in 2010, where Derek Baird killed 12 people with a licensed rifle.
At least you had the good sense to mention that massacres still occur there, even with your restrictive, draconian gun laws.
Many gun owners say the media's focus on events like these, though, demonizes legitimate gun owners, despite them being such rare occurrences.
They are rare occurrences. And the fact of the matter is that anytime one of these occurrences come up, immediately the gun controller starts squealing, "We need more gun control! This is why we need more gun control!" And then when somebody like me points out, well, okay, these instances occurred in gun-free zones, maybe we should lift that. That's about the only time a gun controller will turn around and say, if they're honest, say, well, they don't occur that rare, that often enough to warrant that. I have no problem using those rare occurrences to push their agenda. But then when you point out that these incidences almost exclusively occur in gun-free zones, then they come around and say, well, no, that's just too rare of an occurrence to justify lifting our gun-free zones. That's if you get one that's somewhat honest, which even those are hard to find. At most times, you'll get deafening silence. And I do mean deafening silence. It's almost like you can hear a pin drop. Or you'll get, "Oh, well, that would only make the situation worse. The answer is not more guns, it's less guns." That's another thing you'll get from them.
Gun conversations in this country are usually centred around those in the US, not really here in the UK. And that's because America's relationship with guns is a lot more serious.
Yeah. There are more of us in the US that value our freedom. There are more of us in the US that don't have this irrational fear of firearms. There are more of us in the US that don't cave to emotionalism and sensationalism. There are more of us who are more concerned about hearing the facts and trying to find a real solution other than demonizing gun owners and scapegoating us than there is in the UK. This is why here in the US we get treated better than the guy you spoke to who was a gun owner over there in the UK.
For example, in the UK in 2014, there were 24 homicide gun deaths for the whole year. In the US, on Christmas Day alone last year, there were 27 deaths.
Okay, so if we can drop the centration here for just a few seconds, the UK has always had a low homicide rate. The US has always had a high homicide rate. Just the facts of the matters. Even before all those wonderful gun laws came out in the UK. Now, with your gun laws, your overall homicide rate did not change. That's why now you're focusing on knife control as well. In the US, well, quite frankly, we've had a higher rate of gun ownership than we've ever had before. I mean, there are more firearms in circulation, and yet our firearm homicides, not our homicides in general, are lower than they were, say, in the 70s. So, you can't find any correlation there. Moreover, if you look at the states and the, mainly the areas with strict gun control, you find a higher homicide rate. Whereas you look at where I'm at, where many people own firearms, firearm ownership is kind of the norm, where we have more lax firearm laws. Well, our firearm homicide and our overall homicide rates aren't near as high as some of those places, such as DC, such as Chicago. You can't find a correlation between less restrictive gun laws and homicide, and you cannot find a correlation between more gun ownership and homicide. There's a saying, correlation does not equal causation. You guys can't even find a correlation here.
As with the extremely well-known NRA in the United States, Britain also has its own version of the NRA. It's just not quite as big, or not really the same thing as its American counterpart. It is 12 years older though.
Alright, so small children check their beds and their closets for the boogeyman at night. Gun controllers check their beds and their closet for NRA members. I had to throw that one in there. But anyway, hate to break it to you, dude, but the opposition to these gun control laws don't just come from the NRA. I'm not an NRA member. I am a lifetime member of Gun Owners of America, if that makes any difference to you. And the NRA, let's get a little history on them. They weren't founded as a gun lobby. They were founded as a civilian marksmanship program back in 1871. And the reason for that being, obviously, is if you look at the Civil War, the Union outnumbered the Confederacy 4-1. They had the bulk of the industrial sector on their side. They had every paper advantage you want to throw out there. And still, they almost lost that war. I mean, if it hadn't been for one or two mistakes the Confederates had made, we would be living in the CSA right. Well, I would be living in the CSA right now, and the Union would be living in its own state as it is. It'd be two separate nations, the United States of America and the Confederate States of America. That didn't happen, obviously, due to a few mistakes. Combat deaths. We exacted our toll. For every Confederate soldier killed, there were 2 Union soldiers killed in combat. the standard Confederate cavalryman was expected to fight and kill 2 Union cavalrymen in any offset. So, after the war, after the death toll, several Union generals realized, hey, the people we had fighting for us weren't near as good as soldiers as Confederates. And they wanted to make sure that they did everything they could to prevent that from happening again. That included founding the NRA. Now, the NRA does some lobbying now. They, more often than not, do a good job of protecting our freedom to own a firearm. There are times that they cave a little bit. But on the same note, the reason where they get their power and their influence, and I know a few NRA members, is because they have people willing to donate to the NRA. They have people that are backing the NRA. They have people that are willing to vote against politicians who violate the Second Amendment. GOA, we're a little bit more hardline on firearm freedom than the NRA is. I have contacted congressmen myself. I call congressmen all the time. When I talk to them, there are a lot of them like, well, oh, wait, you're a member of Gun Owners of America, aren't you? Yes, I am. But the reason why we have the freedom in our country is not due to some mythical boogeyman that's got an unlimited supply of funding. It's the fact that we do have people who oppose these restrictions here in my country. This is where the NRA draws its power from. This is where Gun Owners of America draw their power from. Is because there are people, I know this is a foreign concept to you, believe in the basic human right to have and carry the best tools for personal protection possible. Not only that, but there are a lot of us that believe that we should be able to own any weapon. The weapon's not the crime itself. We are against crime, but the weapon does not equate to the crime.
They've even got handguns. Yeah, this one's from 1894.
They've even got handguns here. Oh my God. It's from 1894. Yeah, something they probably don't make ammunition for anymore. Oh my God.
But these are now illegal.
Yeah, no, nobody's trying to take your gun away. They just want to make it illegal.
Obviously, there's the infamous American NRA. Is this similar to that?
I'm not terribly familiar with them, to be honest. They have a big political lobbying, and again, I think they've been very successful in what they do. We're all about sporting shooting.
And that's where you fail. That's where you failed the people you are backing. The people you claim to be backing. You see, the most important reason to have a firearm is personal protection. Oh yeah, to protect yourself against people who may very well want to kill you, or who may very well kill you. You take that out of there, what do you got when somebody's like, my child's dead? What do you got then? Well, we'd really like to protect our sport shooting here. We'd really like to protect our toy for hunting. You see how juvenile that makes you sound. You see how juvenile that makes you. You don't give a damn about the people who would use those firearms to protect their lives and the lives of their children. But it's cool to protect your toy for hunting, your toy for sports shooting. And then turn around and call anybody who would use a firearm for personal protection or protection of their loved ones as an extremist. You see where you fail at that.
I think there are areas of common interest.
I think a large part of theirs is obviously the constitutional right to own a weapon and also using weapons for self-defence. Is that something that you would like to see in this country?
Well, I have no issue in terms of self-defence. It's not part of our remit. People in this country can.
Okay, well, if you have no problem with it, why aren't you out there supporting it right now? That would lend a hell of a lot more credibility to you and your organization than simply protecting sports shooting. You see where I'm going with this, my man?
I own rifles or shotguns or any firearm actually for self-defence. That's not what they're used for. They're purely sporting vehicles.
So you said, well, yeah, we know it can be used for self-defense, but we're purely a sporting movement. And you wonder why you have so many problems against the gun controllers.
Are you purposely missing? No, are you? I'm not even joking. Because you hit the same place each time.
Yeah, no, I cheated. I shot 5 into the centre about 10 minutes ago when you were in the loo.
The NRA has over 28,000 members and say they perform checks on each of them prior to them joining. As it's a Home Office approved club, being a member also counts as good reason when applying for a licence. So, if I wanted to get a gun, this is one option of where to begin. With an instructor like Miles.
How would you stop, say I was like a complete psychopath who had the ability to muffle my social skills to make it seem like I was completely fine and had no issues? How do you kind of prevent for that?
Could it be perhaps that you're so fixated on psychos and criminals getting guns that you didn't even stop to think that just maybe your measures are going so far to the point where for every maybe one criminal or psycho you stop from getting a gun, you stop 100 people from getting the very tool they could have used to protect their life. So far in this video, I haven't seen you ask any tough questions to the Law Commission. It's just been to other pro-freedom people and organizations. Just wanted to throw that out there,
That's the awful part of it. You use your gut. We're discussing our probationers who are learning how to shoot with us, but we're also talking to the police now. Because of the Data Protection Act, obviously they can't turn around and go, run away, you don't want to have anything to do with this person. They'll give us a sort of a hint that maybe things aren't quite right. But as you say, it's like anything. You can't legislate for somebody waking up one morning and going tonto.
Right, Ben.
You can't wave a magical government legislation wand and make the bad stuff go away. I would have thought you'd have figured that out already. You live in the UK. Come on, man. I would have thought you figured that out by now.
Benjamin, shotgun is a very basic thing.
Whilst at the NRA grounds, I was given the opportunity to handle a shotgun for the first time.
Use the safety catches. We don't rely on that. It's safe when it's open. There you go, you got him. Very good, put the gun down.
That was a lot more powerful than I expected, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so at least you didn't go Gersh Kuntzman on us and talk about how the shotgun recoil bruised your shoulder and that you have temporary PTSD. So Props on that.
Like that. Do you do much TV stuff?
No.
My time spent with the UK's gun owners was an interesting one. I found that in this mostly male world, there's also an increasing female presence.
You run an all-female
Yeah.
gun club. How did that happen?
So I'm really into shooting, and when I learnt to shoot, it was just a load of old boys. And while they were like really good to me and like really supportive and helpful, I just thought that there's just no women, and we're all missing a trick here. And wouldn't it be amazing for shooting to be more accessible than it's ever been? We teach women to shoot, and then we all eat cake afterwards.
I found there are definitely
Yep. Well, apparently left-wing ideology isn't for all women either, huh?
concerns around firearm laws in the UK. Reforms proposed by the Law Commission were included in February into a policing and crime bill sponsored by Theresa May.
We made recommendations to close various loopholes in the existing law in relation to some fundamental failings. Lack of definition of whether something is a lethal barreled weapon, whether something is an antique firearm so that it falls within the exemption, whether something is a readily convertible imitation firearm. So those are recommendations we made that have been taken forward.
Let me guess. None of them involved easing any restrictions, and all of them involved increasing the restrictions. I'm shocked.
Their report did not touch on licensing, and the Law Commission see that as the next step.
We suggest that the time is ripe for a full codification exercise where we look at every element of firearms legislation, licensing, and all of the prohibited weapons, and we produce a more coherent scheme in one single statute, rather than have them spread across 34 different statutes. And that will allow us also to look at the efficiency of and the effectiveness of the licensing regimes.
Yep. Because it's easier to ram as many provisions through as possible before everyone gets a chance to read the law to its entirety, right? You know, and hell, even if people find bad provisions in the law, you know, people were able to point out a bad provision here, bad provision there. You guys turn around and say, well, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, huh? You know, I mean, I know that it's not a perfect law, but we should still pass it anyway. This is a gun controller's wet dream right here. And I'm going to tell you right now, I haven't read any of the recommendations the Law Commission has made, but given the fact that they haven't been asked any tough questions here, given the fact that they are claiming that the gun laws there are inadequate, even though they're among the most restrictive in the world, given the fact they want to ram this through all in one push instead of multiple bills to see, hey, okay, maybe some people don't like that, so maybe they shouldn't be forced to accept that recommendation. No, they got to ram it through all in one. Think about that there for a second. I mean, I know most people, you guys, most of y'all in the UK don't own firearms. I know most of y'all view firearm owners as weirdos, view firearm owners as potential criminals or having small penises. You know, I know Markley's Law comes into effect there, but please, you know, there are people there that enjoy that freedom, and they would really appreciate it if you stopped a second and thought about the issue and just took everything a government-funded body said as the immediate God's truth.
An organisation that assesses the work of the police has also highlighted issues with licensing, suggesting problems like people being allowed to hold onto their firearms after their licence has expired, due to inadequate enforcement.
And yet another issue I have with licensing to own, the expiring licenses. So wait, you're telling me somebody was good enough to get a gun, you know, or several guns, Now, since their license is expired, all of a sudden they're bad people for letting their license expire. For whatever reason that may be, whether they didn't go in to renew it in time, whether they didn't know it lapsed, etc., etc., etc. You're going to go and take hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars worth of property off them for the simple crime of letting their license expire. Is that what you guys think keeps you safe? You think that stops murder? You know, I'm just going to cut it off right here. UK, the way you treat your gun owners is absolutely fucking sick. Fuck you and your asses, and I'm surprised that there are any gun owners still loyal to the UK. You know, and for the rest of you fucking leeches over there who sit there and are bored by the idea of private firearm ownership, fuck you. Fuck you. Y'all take her easy out there.